Listen to me closely, because what I'm about to tell you is the story the corporate media is too cowardly to tell you straight. Right now, deep inside the corridors of the White House, Donald Trump is pacing. He is sweating. He is realizing that the one-week war he promised his base, the quick little bombing campaign to look tough, is turning into the quagmire that everyone with half a brain warned him about. The headlines are breaking, and they are brutal.
Trump says productive talks, in-depth talks with Iran, but the Iranian Foreign Ministry has cleared the air. The Iranian Foreign Ministry says no talks with Washington.
And Tehran claims that there has been no communication with Washington.
There is no end in sight to the escalating conflict in the Middle East. Iran's foreign minister says Tehran has not asked for negotiations with the U.S., and that's
Iran has officially, publicly, and with absolute finality, slammed the door shut on any and all negotiations with Washington. We are getting reports from Tehran confirming that Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has declared that the window for diplomacy is not just closed, it has been welded shut. According to senior Iranian officials, the messages from Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, are being left on read, ignored like spam mail from a telemarketer. And the reason is as simple as it is devastating for Trump's ego. The Iranians have decided that the battlefield, and the battlefield alone, will decide this. Not the boardroom in Mar-a-Lago. Not Jared Kushner's back-channel chats. Not the empty promises of a man who tears up agreements the moment he signs them.
I don't think the question of talking with Americans or negotiation with Americans once again would be on the table, because we have a very bitter experience of talking with Americans. We negotiated with them last year in last June, and they attacked us in the middle of negotiations. And again this year, they tried to convince us that this time is different. They promised us that they don't have any intention to attack us, and they wanted to resolve Iran's nuclear question peacefully and to find a negotiated solution, and we finally accepted. But again, after 3 rounds of negotiation, and after the American team in the negotiation, said itself that we made a big progress, still they decided to attack us. So I don't think, talking with Americans anymore would be, on our agenda anymore.
The spokesman for the Khatam al-Anbiya headquarters, the military arm coordinating this defense, has issued a chilling warning to the occupiers. The coming war will be fought with a ferocious intensity that the Israeli entity has never witnessed in its entire history of aggression.
جانیان انسان نما بالاتر است. فقط از اینها برمی آید که مردان، زنان و کودکان بیگناه را به خاک و خون بکشند و بناهای فرهنگی تاریخی را تخریب کنند و ادعا کنند مدافع مردم هستند که از این کودک‌کش‌های کودکخوار تعجبی ندارد. شما با حافظه تاریخی مردم نمیتوانید بجنگید. حافظه‌ای که فقط و فقط شکست شما را از ابتدای پیروزی انقلاب اسلامی تا به امروز به یاد دارد. در این نبرد پیروزی با کسی است که ترس به
This is the reality that is now dawning on the man who thought he could bully an entire nation of 90 million people into submission with a few airstrikes and some tweets. The narrative Trump sold to the American people that this was about stopping a nuclear weapon is unraveling in real time, revealing the ugly truth beneath. This was always about oil security, the petrodollar, and ensuring the absolute dominance of a rogue entity in Tel Aviv. And now, the chickens are coming home to roost. The Iranians are not running. They are not begging. They are standing firm, and they are wielding cards that Trump, in his infinite arrogance, never accounted for. So, before we go any further, I need you to do something. I need you to hit that like button. Not for me, but for the truth. Smash the share button and send this video to anyone who still believes the lies coming out of the Pentagon. Drop a comment, even if it's just a dot. Let them know real people are watching. Real people understand what's happening. And if you want to support journalism that doesn't take a dime from IPAC or the military-industrial complex, hit that subscribe button. Because we are about to go deep into why Trump's empire of sand is collapsing around his ears. And you need to know the history they don't teach you in school. Let's rewind the tape. Because context here isn't just important, it's everything. The idea that Iran is the one refusing to talk is actually a complete inversion of reality. The truth is, Iran has been negotiating in good faith for decades, only to be stabbed in the back by American presidents who view international law as a suggestion. Go back to 2015. The world saw the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA. This was a monumental diplomatic achievement. Iran agreed to the most intrusive nuclear inspection regime in history. They allowed the International Atomic Energy Agency to crawl all over their facilities. They rolled back their enrichment program. And what did they get in return? A promise of sanctions relief and economic normalization. It was a deal, a contract. And then came Donald Trump. In 2018, he tore it up. Not because Iran violated it. The IAEA confirmed over a dozen times that Iran was complying, but because it was Obama's deal. He called it the worst deal ever and threw it in the trash, listening to the siren songs of the Israeli lobby and the neocons who had been itching for war since the 90s. This was the first knife in the back. But it wasn't the last. The assassination of General Qasem Soleimani in 2020, the man who was the hero of the anti-ISIS fight, the ISIS Slayer, was an act of state terrorism, plain and simple. Trump ordered a drone strike to kill a foreign military official who was visiting Baghdad on a diplomatic mission. There was no due process. There was no declaration of war. There was just an impulsive decision made by a man who watches too much Fox News, advised by the same warmongers who lied about Iraq's WMDs. For the Iranians, that was the moment diplomacy died. How do you negotiate with someone who uses a drone to murder your top commander when he comes to talk peace? But the pain didn't start with Trump, and it didn't stop with Soleimani. The economic warfare the West has waged on Iran is a crime against humanity that has been met with global silence. This isn't just about sanctions, as a word you hear on the news. We are talking about the weaponization of starvation. The sanctions regime, which Trump expanded and Biden sadly maintained, specifically targeted medicine. Think about that for a second. American policy, written into law, lobbied for by the Israeli-American donors who fund our elections, has been to block financial institutions from processing payments for life-saving drugs. People with rare diseases, children with cancer, the elderly needing heart medication, they have suffered and died because Washington decided that Iran's sovereignty was a threat to the petrodollar. The legislation explicitly carves out exceptions for food and medicine, but in practice, the over-compliance of international banks, terrified of being cut off from the U.S. financial system, means that no one dares to sell insulin or chemotherapy drugs to Iranians. This is collective punishment. This is the definition of terrorism by economic means. And what is Iran's crime? Wanting to be independent? Wanting to have a missile program for defense after watching Iraq, Libya, and Syria get torn apart by NATO bombs? Wanting to sell its own oil, its God-given natural resource, without the U.S. dictating who can buy it? The sanctions on oil sales were designed to cripple the economy, to turn the people against their government, to create chaos, so that the puppets of the West could take over. And through it all, the Iranians have stood resilient, building their own industries, innovating under siege, refusing to bow. And now, Trump expects them to come to the table? After he withdrew from the deal? After he assassinated their general? After he starved their children? The sheer arrogance of this man is breathtaking. He thought that by launching a massive aerial attack, Operation Epic Fury, they called it because of course they have to give it a Hollywood name, he could force Iran to capitulate. He thought that by killing the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he would shatter the government and the people would rise up and welcome American troops with flowers. This is the fantasy that AIPAC and the Israeli donors sold him. This is the fantasy that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, a man who has the geopolitical instincts of a real estate developer flipping a condo, sold him. These are the people whispering in his ear, telling him that Iran is weak, that the regime is about to collapse, that all he has to do is push the button and it will be a one-week war. Now Iranian commanders are saying they are more surprised for Trump in Israel.
نمایشی که بعضی از حتی سران نظامی داخل آمریکا، چه اونهایی که استفاده دادن چه اونهایی که هستن، این آخرین چیزی که من قبل از اینکه بیام خدمت شما رصد کردم، گفتن ما خودمون نگرانیم از زیرساخت برق داخل آمریکا. ببینید توانایی سایبری ایران رو دست کم نگیرید. اگر آمریکا به برق ایران لطمه بزنه، برق خود سرزمین‌های ایالات آمریکا در معرض خطره. لازم نیست که حتما ما موشکی داشته باشیم که از این قاره تا اون قاره بره. نه خیر، ما ثابت کردیم آمریکایی‌ها اگر این برنامه رو می‌بینن، ببینن، بشنون، برن تحقیق کنن آیا ما دسترسی به برق داخل ایالات متحده داریم یا نداریم.
گروه‌های هکری اعلام کردن در ساعت اخیر دسترسی به زیرساخت‌ها رو پیدا کردن.
میخوان امتحان کنن، ما که آماده‌ایم. ما ملتی از
Let's talk about the cards Iran holds, because this is where the panic in the White House is palpable. Number 1, the Strait of Hormuz. This is the single most important choke point for global energy. 20% of the world's oil passes through this narrow waterway. Iran has been preparing for a closure operation for decades. They have thousands of mines. They have swarms of fast attack boats. They have anti-ship missiles. The moment Iran decides that the strait is closed, the global price of oil spikes through the roof. And guess what happens to Trump's approval rating when Americans are paying $10 a gallon? He loses the midterms. He loses his precious golf course money. He loses. The Iranians know this. They know that Trump's pressure point isn't Tehran. It's the S&P 500. A bad week on Wall Street makes him jumpier than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. They are going to squeeze him until he screams. Number 2, the human geography. The idea that the Iranian people are going to rise up against their own government because of American bombs is the dumbest assumption in foreign policy. The Americans bombed Iraq for 12 years, and Saddam stayed in power. They bombed Libya, and it became a slave market. They bombed Afghanistan for 20 years, and the Taliban walked back in. What makes Trump think Iran will be different? Iran is not a fractured society. It has a deep history. The Persian Empire, thousands of years of civilization. When you drop a bomb on Iran, you are not just hitting a military installation. You are insulting the collective memory of a nation that has survived Alexander the Great, the Mongols, and the British Empire. They are not going to surrender to a man who can't even handle the truth about his own election results. Number 3, the resistance network. The Iranian military does not fight alone. The axis of resistance stretches from Lebanon to Syria to Iraq to Yemen. These are not just proxies. These are ideologically aligned forces who view the American presence in the region as an occupation. Hezbollah has hundreds of thousands of missiles aimed at Israeli targets. The Houthis in Yemen have already shown they can shut down Red Sea shipping and hit ships with impunity. If this war expands, and it will, Trump is not just fighting Iran. He is fighting a region that is sick and tired of American arrogance. The final irony is that Trump, the great deal maker, the master negotiator, has boxed himself into a corner. He has run out of options. He cannot send ground troops in. He promised the American people he would end endless wars, not start a new one in a country of 90 million people with rugged terrain and a massive military. He cannot stop the economic pain. The sanctions have already backfired and united the Iranian populace. He cannot win militarily without turning the entire Middle East into a sea of fire. So, watch closely. The empire is crumbling, and the only thing we can do is tell the truth, support the resistance, and watch the bullies get what they deserve. Subscribe, we'll have more updates for you as the situation develops, because this story is far from over. It's just getting started.